Greetings, this is Christine Van Pelt on Gibson County, Indiana, State Coordinator for the Indiana Assembly, and we are continuing with Brett Allen Winter's Declaration of 76, United States Constitution, a Common Lawyer Comments, clause by clause. His link is at the top, commonlawyer.com, and you can be able to find and support his works. So we'll go ahead and get moving forward with this week's reading. All right, Amendment 14, offered 1866, ratified 1868. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Section 2. Representatives shall be apportioned among the several states according to their respective numbers, counting the whole number of persons in each state, excluding Indians not taxed. But when the right to vote at any election for the choice of electors for President and Vice President of the United States, representatives in Congress, the executive and judicial officers of a state, or the members of the legislature thereof, is denied to any of the male inhabitants of such state, being 21 years of age and citizens of the United States, or in any way abridged except for participation in rebellion or other crime, the basis of representation therein shall be reduced in the proportion which the number of such male citizens shall bear to the whole number of male citizens 21 years of age in such state. Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who have previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may by a vote of 2/3 of each house remove such disability. Section 4. The validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned, but neither the United States nor any state shall assume or pay any debt or obligation incurred in aid of insurrection or rebellion against the United States, or any claim for loss or emancipation of any slave. But all such debts, obligations, and claims shall be held illegal and void. Section 5. The Congress shall have power to enforce by appropriate legislation the provisions of this article. Comment. This Amendment 14 defines both state and U.S. citizenship with two requirements: born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The first is a question of fact. The second is a question of law, requiring that a citizen not only be subject to all laws within the United States boundaries, but also owe loyalty to the United States and no other. Bottom line, every person within the boundaries of the United States is subject to its jurisdiction, whether he wants to be or not. But this jurisdiction clause refers to loyalty. Also, this Amendment 14 indicates that Indians not taxed are part of the body politic. For example, in 1920, Congress, knowing that even though near every American Indian was born in the United States, most were not citizens. Congress therefore said that any American Indian who wanted to become a citizen is now allowed to do so. These two requirements are meant to keep America from becoming whelmed with people without understanding of and loyalty to our common law ways of freedom, the laws, nature's God. Said to protect the individual's constitutionally protected rights against state government violation. Amendment 14 removed state citizenship as the condition for national citizenship. Before this amendment, U.S. citizenship depended upon whether one was a citizen of one of the states. See this handbook, U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 16, and comment. By the Militia Act of 1792, national duty of a state militiaman depends on state citizenship, not national, because our Constitution establishes no national militia. Of note, disgusted at Congress's unconstitutional schemes, Ohio and New Jersey pulled their vote for Amendment 14. It failed the required ratification of 3/4 of the states by one state. Congress and the Secretary of State nonetheless certified it. The state governments are, by the very theory of the Constitution, essential constitutional constituent parts of the general government. They can exist without the latter, but the latter cannot exist without them. Joseph's story. In short, only a citizen of one of the several states has had the rights of national citizenship. Nowadays, however, a voter having moved from his voting precinct to another state can still vote in that precinct for national office holders only, never revealing where he now lives. Hence, one's right to vote for federal office holders no longer depends on any state citizenship. By a practice called selective incorporation, courts now enforce many of the constitutionally protected rights in the first 10 amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, against violations by state government, just as these amendments limit the general government. For example, our Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, religion, to assemble and to keep and bear arms, rights against unwarranted, unreasonable searches and seizures, self-incrimination, and the right to a speedy and public trial, all forbid state action violating these constitutionally protected rights. However, other Bill of Rights, e.g., the right to grand jury indictment, Amendment 6, and the right to jury trial in non-criminal cases, Amendment 7, the federal courts have yet to require of the states through such selective incorporation. The Supreme Court never applied our Bill of Rights to limit state governments until the 20th century. Barron v. Mayer, 32 U.S. 7 Pete 243. Amendment 15, offered 1869, ratified 1870. Section 1, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Section 2, the Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Comment. As Amendment 14, Amendment 15 falsely presumes that United States citizenship depends not on state citizenship, a notion strange to the framers. Accordingly, says the Supreme Court, the 15th Amendment did not confer the right to vote upon anyone, but merely invested citizens of the United States with a new constitutional right, which is exemption from discrimination in the exercise of the elected franchise on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Amendment 16, offered 1909, said ratified 1913. The Congress shall have no power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, without regard to any census or enumeration. Comment. Amendment 16 never repeals or otherwise changes two of our Constitution's rules. Only Congress has lawful power to collect taxes. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1. Congress must distribute the burden of direct taxes among the states in proportion to their populations. See Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4. This Amendment 16, however, says Congress can lay taxes on incomes, a direct tax, without regard to any census, i.e., taxation of the separate states without their equal representation, a notion contrary to our entire constitutional design. Because the tax laid upon a person owning a designated kind of property is unavoidable by either giving up rights to that property or by shifting its burden to another, it is called a direct tax. By contrast, because a tax put upon a person doing a designated type of action or transaction can be shifted to another, it is called an indirect tax. For example, a yearly real estate tax is direct because a landowner cannot shift it to another without giving up his rights to that property. But a tax on a retailer's buying wholesale is indirect because he can shift it, pass it on to the buyer at resale. Because each person has both rights in his property and property in his rights, the Supreme Court found early on that a capitation tax on one's head, i.e., on personhood or life, and an income tax on a person's labor or services, i.e., right to make a living, being wholly unavoidable, are also direct and therefore require apportionment among the several states. See Article 1, Section 3, Clause 2. Note, among the strongest indications that income taxes are direct is government's insistence that one cannot shift or otherwise avoid a tax on one's income by assigning it to another. The taxing or banking powers phrase profit or gain furthers their cabal of confusion and abuse. Be not deceived, they do not define gain as profit. Though the federal tax code never defines income, courts say it is profit, return on the investment of greater real worth than the investment, or gain. Return on an investment, though greater as measured in devalued dollars, that is not of greater real worth than the investment, which puts barter and work swapping or services for money, legal tender, outside of profit or gain. Nonetheless, courts hold otherwise, even though inconsistent with their definition of income as a profit or gain. By contrast, where a tax on profit or gain is shiftable to another, it is indirect, requiring no apportionment of the burden among the states according to population. See this Handbook, U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, and comments discussing taxes. Voluntary or mandatory? According to our courts, federal income taxes are voluntary as distinguished from mandatory. In so holding, our courts distinguish that income tax, voluntary, from excise tax is mandatory, such as the whiskey and tobacco taxes. On this point, the common sense understanding among taxpayers accords with the common law. Among taxpayers, voluntary means it is one's choice to pay or not pay taxes. Mandatory means one has no choice, pay or be forced to pay, but either way, one must pay. In short, voluntary means you decide, mandatory means another decides for you. The common law agrees. At common law, one's duty can be to choose one's own course of action, exercise discretion, or to obey another's choice for one's actions, no discretion allowed. In any case where a person possesses the discretion to decide between choices, no other can exercise his discretion, choose for him. Though courts have held that income taxes are voluntary, no stable-minded man can say that revenuers accept the court's ruling. Nevertheless, they give lip service to our courts, saying taxpayers have a choice, while at the same time swinging a cudgel and brandishing a pistol. Here's your choice, says the Fed. You can pay or refuse to pay. If you refuse, we will throw you in jail and thereby split your family, destroy your business, and end your ability to make a living. Further, if you ever do make any money, we will take it by force. Of course, the revenuers never use this explanation of voluntary in our courts because it grates on judges' ears. Not that judges will do anything to stop revenuers from using force unlawfully. It's just bad politics to make such abuse so obvious. But the revenuers skew their explanation of voluntary even more. We agree with the courts, the revenuers continue, that income taxes are voluntary. Just as you must choose whether or not to obey a stop sign, you must also choose whether or not to pay income taxes. Such explanation is, in layman's terms, childish, even laughable. The legal term is frivolous for the following reasons. Voluntary equals choice to pay or not to pay. Respecting taxes, the federal courts distinguish voluntary from mandatory, saying that which is voluntary enjoys unhampered discretion, which our courts call meaningful choice. By contrast, that which is mandatory uses force and threat of force to forbid discretion, rendering choice meaningless. Indeed, to exercise discretion is to say yes or no. Accordingly, a court can rightly compel force that one having discretion to exercise it by choosing one or the other, but it cannot rightly compel him to choose the one the court demands. Bottom line, at common law, any choice made under threat of being thrown in jail or duress makes it mandatory, not voluntary. To sum up, our courts say that the income tax, unlike mandatory excise taxes, is voluntary. Further, say our courts, the income tax is non-exacted excise taxes, such as the tax on whiskey, are exacted. That which is voluntary demands use of one's discretion, choice from an unhampered will. By contrast, that which is mandatory demands you to substitute the choice of another for your own. At its root, mandatory means not subject to your discretion, but subject only to the orders of some regulatory or legislative code. Traffic laws are thus said to be mandatory because they require no discretion, only obedience. Accordingly, disobedience is a crime. In conclusion, Americans insist on this foregoing court holding that the income tax is voluntary at great peril because the revenuers deem the income tax to be mandatory, exacting its payment using force and threat of force. Thus, it's said that income tax is voluntary according to the law, but mandatory according to the taxing powers. See further Brent Allen Winter's Excellence of the Common Law, subsection 4.3.2.3, for distinctions between discretionary and administrative acts. All right, and that is all for this week's reading. And we will see you on the next call. Peace and love.